And welcome into the next edition of the Vegas Squares podcast. We are sitting here in the studio on Friday night. It is Spike and myself on the mic. Spike, what's going on this evening?
Oh, God, I wish I had some fun shit to report, but it's same old at the McAwesome household.
Yeah, how's the wife doing?
She's getting out of work at reasonable hours, and by that I mean she only works about 10 hours a day instead of 16.
Well, I know she's dancing and dancing on the tabletops right now that you're not there, so for that, you're welcome, I guess, Mrs. McAwesome. Anyways, we've got quite an interesting show lined up here with no Anthony. We got a couple scenarios going on in the world of sports that I kind of wanted to touch on. Nothing really major, just some kind of things that kind of caught my eye this week in the news. And anything for you kind of just stood out this week? It was kind of because you and I talk through text, and usually I'll get a little bink from something that kind of catches your eye. I didn't get one this week.
No, this week I spent focusing mainly on looking at some of the bets that I could place on the Golden Knights game. Golden Knights are in the middle of a pretty extensive homestand, the longest one of the season right now. So, between that and, actual work that I have to do, I haven't really had a chance to try to find an interesting sports angle that I can get at.
Yeah, and you talked about on William Hill, if the Knights win the Cup, they could be, out of business. I wonder if, since they've juiced it down so hard, like 5 or 6 to 1 at this point?
6 to 1 as of yesterday.
I wonder if there's other teams starting to gain value in the mix on that. We'll have to take a look at that.
The Bruins right now were the ones that kind of piqued my interest because they're at 8.5 to 1, which still isn't great. But for a team that's playing as well as they are, being as coached as well as they are, who are going to be buyers at the trade deadline, I think they're only going to get better from here unless there's some kind of catastrophic injury to like a Bergeron or a Marchand.
Right. And I was looking at moneypuck.com and their chances of making the playoffs. They keep those up to date day to day with the different teams, and the Knights have pretty much all but solidified, with the exception of a catastrophic collapse. I believe they're 99.99% to make the playoffs. And I know you're a season ticket holder, likewise. And have you received anything information-wise on playoff tickets?
No, not yet. It's probably still a little too early. Nothing's been clinched. Nothing's been decided as of now, so I can kind of see why the front office is hesitating. Plus, I'm willing to bet they didn't prepare for this kind of contingency, so I'm sure it's kind of catching everybody by surprise at this point, except Roberto Luongo, who actually predicted back in November that they would make the playoffs.
Really? I didn't know that. Was he trying to
I mean, he was being a wise ass on Twitter, because he's always a wise ass on Twitter. But, I think it was either the Knights. Actually, it may have even been in early October when the Knights started, 4-0 or whatever the historic run was, and Luongo went on Twitter and said, "Are you selling playoff tickets now, or do we have to wait for spring?"
Well, I got a friend who's a Lightning holder and a Lightning season ticket holder, and he has said that they got their stuff in the mail a couple days ago. So the Lightning are definitely prepping. I was looking at the message boards, and the Ducks have prepped, and they're not even actually in the playoff spot at this point. So I was curious to see. Huh. I'm interested to see what uncharted territory the Knights front office is wading into, because you're right. They've never done this before. So It's kind of interesting when I see, February 15th, we're talking the season's over in less than 60 days. So
yeah, that's a good point.
We're talking about, people got to get ready, get plans ready. Let's kind of dive into that, because I've kind of seen on a lot of message boards where a lot of non-season ticket holders are basically griping or complaining, for lack of better words, about what season ticket members do with their tickets as far as reselling.
Right. I think we're sort of in a unique situation, because I think a lot of people bought the season tickets with the assumption that they just dump as many of them as possible on the secondary market, thinking that they'd be able to be profitable solely based on the fact that this was a spectacle. This was a brand new team in Vegas, so people would want to see it just for that. The fact that they're good is only driving those prices up. I think there's still plenty of people that have tickets. I've never seen the same people sit in front of me twice.
Really?
And it's not just a couple of seats. It's probably the first 8 seats in the row directly in front of me.
Yeah, last night I saw your row was the row in front of you was lined with Edmonton fans. I saw a sea of orange right in front of you.
Yeah, and that's, for me as a piece of shit obnoxious fan, it's been a little fun because when the Knights score...
You or the people in front of you?
For me. For me, it's especially fun because I can kind of shit-talk them behind their backs, and whether or not they're listening, I don't know. But when the Knights score, I can be extra loud and obnoxious. I lean forward just a little bit more to do my applause and scream and all that. So it's, I don't think they enjoy me too much.
No, but I'm sure that, in situations where Edmonton came in last time, and a couple other teams have come in and beat us, I'm sure that those fans have given it right back to you, I'm sure.
Oh, of course, yeah.
I'm sure Philly fan was probably
the Philly fans were not shy about it. The Islanders fans were not shy about it, especially because I asked if Rick DiPietro was starting in net that night, and
he's still under contract.
I think so. They kind of gave me a hard time about it, and then there were a couple of guys who were chirping about the Islanders and how, like, quote unquote good they were. And I said, you guys hired Mike Milbury as your coach once. Shut the fuck up. And the guy looked back at me. He goes, I didn't do that. I was like, oh, fair point. All right.
What's that cheer they do? I know they do a cheer. I remember at the Islanders game, they do some weird cheer after a goal or before a goal.
Yeah, some kind of, they put their index fingers in the air and do a yeah thing. I don't exactly know what it is.
I didn't quite catch what it was. It was a little strange in my opinion. But they were dominating the game, so I guess I was looking for other methods to be upset about. But, initial thoughts are, like you said, off there, basic capitalism. I bought the tickets. I put the money up. I also am, I would say, at least 50% of the reason this team exists as a season ticket holder because of the drive. When I speak for us. The drive. This team wouldn't exist without that ticket drive. So, why are we not? Why is it just a short-sighted mentality of a non-season ticket holder to say, well, I want to go to a game, but you guys have run the price up. Well, hey, c'est la vie.
Yeah. And I think part of that is, the hindsight is 20/20. Like, these are the people that wish they had gotten in on the ground floor.
Right.
These are the people that, figured this team was going to be garbage and would wait for them to, be even respectable before putting down the season tickets. And I think that they're kicking themselves a little bit. I was actually talking to my neighbor, which I know is a rarity in Vegas for anybody to actually know their neighbors and speak to them. But I was over at his house. We talked for about half an hour, and one of the topics that came up were these tickets. He actually owns a business, and he's kicking himself not just for not buying them personally, but for buying them for his business to give out to clients and everything else to try to drum up a little more business.
And that's the thing. Kind of look at yourself from the other side. If you were not a season ticket holder and these tickets were going, because I've sold Chicago for 4 or 5x the face value. I've sold Philadelphia was, I think, 3 times what I paid. Where does it look from a non-season ticket holder's perspective? Where does it look like when you finally do go to a game and a lot of the seats where should be Knights fans are fans of the opposing team? Because it happens. Last night it happened. I'd say it was probably 40% maybe of Edmonton last night.
That sounds about right, yeah. And I think it was only that low because the game was a Thursday night. I think
that last one was on a Saturday, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was a Saturday, and not only was
they dominated.
Not only was it a Saturday and they dominated, but it was Connor McDavid's birthday.
Oh yeah.
So the arena sang "Happy Birthday" to him during the warm-ups.
Right.
I think this is what a lot of people expected, especially the people that don't live in Vegas and that didn't plan on coming to games. This was the safe prediction, is that a lot of the people in the stands would be fans of the opposing team, whether that was they figured that Vegas locals would sell the tickets, or they figured that the tickets would be available and people would make the trip to Las Vegas specifically for the game, or they thought that casinos would buy up all the tickets and use them as comps to give out to people to try to drum up interest or business or whatever the case may be.
Right, and last Tuesday they played, or a couple days ago they played the Hawks, and I actually sold the tickets not on a like a StubHub or anything. I sold them face to face, and I told the guy, I said, "Here, this is my price," and he said, "Holy crap, yes, yes." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And I was like, "Man, I'm getting this guy pretty good." I mean, not like I was trying to gouge him, but he's like, "Dude, this ticket would cost almost double at the United Center."
Wow.
So I mean, we're talking about fact of like, okay, so I paid X amount, got it for Y, which was I think 4 or 5X of my value. And this guy's calling it a bargain. So, I mean, how am I supposed to feel about that?
Yeah, no, you take the money and you smile all the way to the bank. And that's the thing, like, I've sold a few of the games. I sold the first Chicago game for 2 or 3X just because I put them on there trying to get that amount of money. I wasn't sure if it would happen. Tickets sold in 4 hours.
Right.
Like, it was ridiculous. And that was on StubHub. For the other tickets that I've sold, I actually haven't been trying to make a profit on this thing. Like, I don't want to lose money. That's my thing.
Of course.
So the tickets that I sell, I'm selling for barely above face value plus what I paid for the prepaid parking pass.
And the fees and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I basically, I'm breaking even or maybe making like $10 or $20 per game when I do sell a ticket. But for the other people, there are people around me, somebody 2 rows behind me has 2 season tickets, and they were profitable by December. Wow. And so now every game that they sell from here on out, they're just in the black.
Yeah, and see, that was my thought is a lot of season ticket holders who are knowledgeable about the NHL are not idiots. They're going to know exactly what's going to sell. Edmonton, Montreal, Philadelphia, Chicago. Help me out here. Who else is going to be those? L.A.
L.A. Kings. Definitely, yep.
To an extent, maybe Boston, maybe
Detroit.
Detroit. Detroit's still the biggest crowd I've ever seen.
Yeah.
As far as visiting fans. But those are the teams that are going to get you they're going to get you the money because they're going to come in, they're going to buy the tickets no matter what because they're like, I'm coming to this game. I see a lot of games like Carolina, Florida, different games like that where the tilt is more towards VGK fans because I think season ticket holders know I'm not really going to get the price I expect out of those specific tickets.
Right, so those are probably the friends and family who are buying the tickets or just getting them for free that are going to the games or, buying them on StubHub for maybe 10% markup as opposed to 2 or 3X.
Yeah, I'd like to get somebody, interacting who's not a season ticket holder because obviously you and I have similar opinions on how season ticket holders can handle their merchandise or their quantity of tickets. But I'd like to get actual legitimate reasons as to, other than just whining about ticket prices, as to why they have an issue with teams doing that. I mean, I think if you want to have the same issue or want to correct the problem, come down and get some season tickets. They're doing the drive right now. Right,
and that's that's part of the problem is how does the team police it?
Because they don't need to. They got the price that they asked for.
Exactly my point is, the team has sold the tickets to a person, and then if that person decides to use them or sell them, I don't see how that would be up to the team to determine one way or the other. Like, they can't put a quota for a minimum number of games that a season ticket holder has to attend.
No, and that's why they have those other packages. They have a 10-game package. They have the half season.
Right.
Or you can buy multiple 10-game packages. Or they have those little, 3, 4, 5-game packages.
Right, and those are for the people that, maybe they work swing and they can't make it to games on the regular and they just have to wait for random days off. Or like a buddy of mine who's a big Detroit fan actually took the night off so he could go to the Wings game.
Yeah, I did talk to a guy who, works down in the, the industry, who works a swing shift. He works starting at 9 o'clock, and he said, I wish there was something available where I could create my own ticket package. And I think that would be an interesting thing. He's like, okay, I have Thursdays and Fridays off. I can go to games that are like Sunday matinees. If there's a game like the day they played Colorado on Nevada Day, it was like a 1 o'clock start, I think.
Yeah.
I wish I could build a package, and they could charge me appropriately, but he said, I wish they could build a package based on my schedule. I think in this town, that would be an interesting kind of situation for the Knights. I think that would be brilliant. But
that would
at the same time, it would be hard against full season tickets.
Right.
I think you could create a section or block out a section, like one in the mezzanine, one up in the upper deck. Say, hey, look, this section, this block of seats are create your own seats. I think that'd be kind of interesting. I'm sure the marketing team could figure something like that out.
Well, keep in mind too, this arena seats, I think it's 17.5, and then plus standing room, so you get a little bit more. there are 16,000 season ticket holders.
Right.
So, I mean,
they're not having a lot of unsold seats at this moment. A lot of your drive and your unsold seat or your seats that you're looking for are already purchased.
Right. So the people have to go onto like StubHub and things like that. But for the people that want to get in to like build your own package and do things like that, I think the problem is just quantity of tickets available.
Right.
Like you're getting too few seats at each one of these places where maybe the team's not comfortable putting together that kind of package because, you know.
Well, this year you're right because
Right.
you said 16,000 season ticket holders out of that's over 90% capacity.
Right, but I can't imagine that it's going to drop significantly into next year, especially with the people that are depositing.
I could see a 10%.
new.
I could see a 10% drop when they raise the prices.
Right, but you have other people that are
Ready to go.
That are ready to go and jump in there. So for a total loss, I don't think it'll be 10%. Maybe 2 or 3%, but I can't see 10. Also, I have to burp. Hang on.
I'll leave that one in. Yeah, actually, Desiree's parents are interested in picking up too, so I know that you're right, it could be an offset of maybe, less than 5%. So that's I didn't think about that. That's actually an interesting point because, they are going up next year. They've already said they're going up, so how many people are going to actually, what I've seen, because I follow the people who post on Facebook and Twitter and et cetera, and they're talking about, even with the price going up, it's still, still something I'm going to do. So, we'll see. We'll have to keep track of that. We'll have to revisit this debate with somebody who's not a season ticket holder, kind of get them on here and kind of.
There's actually an interesting, because this point was brought up on the Golden Knights Reddit page, and people were asking about this. Now, a lot of it was people were complaining because they didn't get in on the ground floor. They're priced out essentially,
right?
Trying to buy tickets on the secondary market, but if there were interesting points from that, then I'd like to hear from those people to say, why do you feel this way apart from your wallet crying?
Right. Because that's not a valid argument because it's the basic, fundamentals of capitalism here. I bought something. I know the market for that something has gone exponential value higher than what I purchased for it. It's supply and demand at this point.
Yeah. Hashtag Bitcoin.
I mean, yeah. Well, look at Bitcoin now that it's come back down to earth. Everybody's freaking out. They're like, oh my God, I got to get rid of it. Well,
yes.
You know what? If and when the Knights come back down to earth, because if this progress isn't sustainable, because they are far and away above what anyone expected to be. That's why people are making so much money off of these tickets.
Oh, yeah.
Eventually, that's going to median down. So, when that comes back down to earth, then we see, now are the season ticket holders starting to kind of have a gripe. I'm not selling them for 4x value anymore. I think you're still going to have the Detroits, the Chicagos of the world. You're still going to get your money. But, I don't think anybody's expecting I'm trying to think of a team like Columbus. I don't think anybody's expecting Columbus to bring as many fans each time. They brought a pretty decent amount. But I think Columbus fans, hey, I did it once. I'm not coming back again. I'm not coming back specifically for a Vegas-Columbus game.
Yeah, and I think it's going to depend on the timing of the games as well. Because, you get a Detroit game on a Tuesday is going to be a different crowd than a Detroit game on a Saturday.
Or a Columbus game in March when they're out of the playoff picture.
Right.
Versus a Columbus game in October when there's,
When everybody has hope.
Yeah, exactly. So it'll be interesting to see the dynamics of that changing. And I'd like to revisit this, this topic. Maybe post on Reddit and see if we can get a chump. Excuse me, I mean a guest. Sorry, had a frog in my throat. But speaking of chumps, actually.
That's a nice transition. All right. Speaking of chumps, Tony's not here today, so let's shit-talk him. Like a couple of yentas.
Speaking of chumps, I think the next two conversation topics are going to be on a couple of chumps in my mind that I usually try to keep off of our podcast. But this one just kind of, had to flick the bug off my wiener on this one. And
Wait. Stop. Time out.
I knew you would say something.
I need to. Where's the Belichick challenge flag? Because I need to know what the fuck just happened there.
I don't know. I was watching The Office. I was watching Office on Netflix for whatever reason. Andy, his girlfriend, was like, "What are you doing?" He's like, "I'm flicking a bug off my wiener," which means he was trying to distract her from what he was actually doing. And I found it funny, so I thought I'd implement it in today's podcast. Anyways, my apologies. Sorry I didn't run that one by you.
So now that I'm a free agent for podcasting, if anybody wants to hire me to come on their show as opposed to this catastrophe,
this ragtag group of idiots. Well, since it's his farewell show, we'll follow it up with one of his favorite on-air personalities, and that's LaVar Ball.
Oh, for fuck's sake.
Like I said, I can't stand this fucking guy, but what he said, every once in a while he says something so absurd that I just kind of touch on it. And this week he basically came out and said that Lonzo, who's pretty pitiful at this point in his career, will not re-sign with the Lakers if the Lakers do not sign the other two Ball kids, who are currently, I think, where are they, in Lithuania or something like that?
Yeah, weren't they supposed to be in college? Or...
One of them was supposed to be in college. He got pulled out for stealing shit.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Yeah, stealing in China, by the way.
They should have cut off his hands for that one.
How goddamn stupid do you have to be to go to, of all places, China and break the law? Like, that's a country that'll make you disappear.
Yeah, well, kind of wish he would have and taken his dad with him. But, I mean, what do you make of a guy who's essentially a sideshow act, basically trying to handcuff a professional franchise into basically signing his meal ticket for the next decade? That's how I see it. That's how I see it, and I think it's crazy. Especially since the first Ball is terrible.
Yeah, no, I don't think you're wrong. I think LaVar Ball is all about LaVar Ball, and it's not that he has his children's best interest at heart. He sees his children as assets with a limited window of viability, where he has to get as much out of them as he possibly can, and he has to do whatever he can to get as much out of the professional franchises that are going to pay his children as much as they can. So this isn't, I'm not even convinced that LaVar Ball is that blind that he thinks that all of his kids are like the greatest basketball players ever. I think he is just in it for himself, and he's in it to exploit his kids.
Set himself up.
Yeah, this is these. If there were a couple more of these kids, we'd be calling them the new Jackson 5.
Yeah, that's a potential way to put it. I look at it, and I've done some research because let's face it, you and I follow the NBA. What's lower than zero?
I mean, if I wanted to watch, a bunch of roided out crybabies flopping around in a pseudo sport, I'd watch the WWE. I couldn't give a fuck less about the NBA.
So, what I've read and what I've kind of talked to people about it who do follow the NBA, the Lakers were the only team with actual interest when Lonzo was picked in the first round. So, that either tells me one of two things: is LaVar did a hell of a sell job on this guy in college, his kid Lonzo, or the Lakers just thought they could revive a franchise with a guy who's local, a ticket seller, basically. And neither of those have really panned out for either side.
I wonder...
But granted, we're only halfway through his first NBA season.
Right, but I wonder, too, if, the Magic Johnson and Luke Waltons of the world figured they would be able to wrangle LaVar Ball better than they have. Like, they figured that maybe once they signed the kid, whose name I can never remember, Lonzo?
Lonzo.
That's the one in the NBA, Lonzo?
The one in the NBA is Lonzo, and the two in Lithuania are Liangelo and LaMelo. Jesus Christ.
It's a lot of alliteration in that family.
And then the fourth one who's on the way is LaHooser Ball. No, I just made that up.
I had to look for visual cues on your face to see if you were joking or not. I legitimately didn't know. But yeah, I think Magic Johnson and Luke Walton and the rest of the front office of the Lakers figured that once they signed Lonzo, they'd be able to put a leash on LaVar, say, knock it off, keep him out of the media, maybe not be able to keep him off Twitter, but at least get him to quiet down a little bit. And it's been anything but, especially with TMZ. They continuously put a microphone in this guy's face.
Now, if Magic Johnson was running Oklahoma City or Toronto or Milwaukee, and this guy came into your franchise, would it be a bit different because it's not Los Angeles?
I'm sure that has something to do with it, yeah.
Because, you're looking at a situation where, they're from Chino Hills. He played at UCLA for 1 year. Los Angeles, and now LaVar came out and said he will not play for anybody but LA. And I think secretly behind closed doors, everybody's like, okay, fine by us. And, apparently he was supposed to be as good enough of a talent to be drafted. I think he was number 2 or 3 in the NBA. So apparently LA either thought this guy will sell tickets at 2 or 3, or this guy is good enough to be taken at 2 or 3. Right now, based on his stats and what everybody's talking about, it looks like their goal was to sell tickets, and that doesn't strike me as a Magic Johnson move, especially as a guy who wants to probably, make this franchise into what he's used to, because, well, we all know Magic in the 80s, they were dominant.
Right, but I think what this comes down to, and I say this knowing that I don't know what I'm talking about.
Fair enough.
I
think we've put the disclaimer on this.
Yeah, I've read a little bit about this. My father still follows the NBA quite a bit. And when I talk to him, he kind of goes on rants, especially when it comes to the Lakers, because he would rather see the Lakers lose than the Celtics win.
It's kind of like you with Montreal, huh?
Oh, God, yeah. I'm not going to be pleasant to be around at that game tomorrow, by the way. But, yeah, so with the Lakers, I think part of it, I think it is just about selling the tickets, selling the jerseys, putting the butts in seats for this guy, and then when his contract's up, just boot him the hell out of town and then say, all right, if you're not going to play for anybody else, you're not playing for us.
Yeah.
And get him out of here. Because with this deal that the Lakers just made with Cleveland, they have freed about 60-some-odd million from their salary cap.
They could sign 2 max guys from whatever.
2 max guys. LeBron James is a free agent this offseason.
So is Paul George.
And Paul George. So I think the play is...
Who's from L.A.?
Let, Lonzo Ball go out there, do his thing. Who cares? They weren't going to use the pick on somebody viable. This is just somebody to bring in for now, because that person, whoever that was, whether that was Lonzo Ball or somebody else.
What if that was Jason Tatum? I mean, look at the guy balling out for the Celtics.
Oh yeah, but I mean,
and then LeBron and Paul George, and they got a big 3.
And then the team's that much stronger. But I think they're not losing anything by just booting this guy off the team, because that person, that position, wasn't going to be relevant to their long-term plans anyway.
Right, because he's a point guard. Ball is Lonzo. And I realistically believe that LeBron is the type of athlete that could come in and play point guard for the Lakers. So, do you really feel like the Lakers work so far ahead into the future, or are that smart to say, I'm going to waste my second pick in the NBA draft on a guy who sells tickets because I know that he won't be here more than 2 years? Do you think that somebody in the NBA is that crafty? To waste a second pick, he was a second overall pick.
Right. Would that surprise you, really?
It wouldn't, but it would be. I mean, you can't do that in the NBA or the NFL. You can't waste a second pick overall.
Oh no,
you can't. You can miss on it, and that's whatever. You took a shot, but to actually say, like you wouldn't take Tim Tebow's second because he sells tickets.
No, you take him 20, whatever.
But that's okay. He's not. If he was a second overall pick because subconsciously he's going to sell tickets, like at Jacksonville. Everybody, the year Tebow came out, everybody's like, Jacksonville's got to take him. He's going to sell tickets for that franchise, and then they didn't even sniff him. You know what I mean? Like I could see. Could you really see the NBA is the only league that strikes me because let's face it, it's a what's the right word to say before I be careful? It's a theatrical league. I'll use that word.
Okay.
Where I could see a situation where a franchise literally blows a pick on a guy who puts butts in the seats. Because not only does Lonzo put butts in the seats as this, he may be great, we want to go see him play, his dad's sitting there. What the fuck's he going to do next? You know what I mean?
Oh, so the spectacle of the father courtside.
The whole family.
You think is a draw. And that's a possibility. I had been looking at it as the front office trying to keep him quiet, like give him what he wants and maybe he'll go away. Because that's worked with so well with
I have a 14-year-old brother. I have a 14-year-old brother who just is enamored with the Ball family. Blows my mind.
Why?
He is enamored with them. He wants the big baller shoes. And I think that's the problem. LaVar is doing it right. That's the age demographic he needs to target. The impressionable kid. And let's face it, my brother's a little tall, skinny stick, white-headed kid with a comb over. And he's like, oh, yeah, I love the Ball family. I'm like, come on, bro.
Yeah, I'll Google how to disown a sibling for you after the show.
Don't do it on my IP address, man. Anyways, my point being is that the more we have this conversation, the more I think, would Magic and company really be that genius to basically blow a pick on ticket sales? when they know what they could potentially get next year. Obviously, if they think they're getting LeBron, IT's gone.
Right.
Thomas has got to be gone because that clearly didn't work the first time.
Yeah, no, nothing about that franchise would surprise me. And they've been garbage for a couple of years already. So what's one more year?
Why are they garbage? I mean, they have the second most NBA. Who's first, Boston or LA? Are they
for
tied?
Championships?
Yeah.
Boston.
Okay, but they're only like 1 or 2, right?
Yeah, well, Boston's got, what, 18, 17?
17 or 18, I think. LA's got like 16 or 17. Whatever, they're close. But point being is how is that not a destination city anymore? Before the pre-ball era.
Right. I mean, part of it has to be not the front office, but the coach. I think Walton is still so young and so untested.
But even before that, they had like Mike Brown. They had some other guys. But like Dwight Howard didn't work out there. And I know a lot of people didn't want to play for Kobe because Kobe was kind of a jerk. But now Kobe's been gone for, what, 2 years?
Is it 2 or 3?
Or did they just? I know it's either 2 or 3 years. But I know.
I mean, even his last year, they were terrible.
Right. So I don't know. Maybe they'll be able to turn it around here in the next year. But my point being is I can't see a scenario where they're going to sign his 2 other kids, coming back full circle.
Oh, no, of course not.
Unless Lonzo becomes fantastic over the course of the next calendar year.
Yeah, do you actually see that as a possibility?
Well, I mean, there's been talks and rumors that he's not actually injured right now. They've actually just put him on injured reserve because they're actually working with basketball gurus to improve this guy.
Oh, wow.
So I think they're going. But could you imagine? I mean, if Lonzo was actually halfway decent, I mean, he's pretty terrible now, and we can't get LaVar Ball to shut up. Could you imagine if he's good?
That really is a worst case scenario. And I guess first of all, to go back to the point, yes, the Celtics have 17. The Lakers have 16, 5 of which is when they were in Minneapolis.
Okay.
So then...
And 11 in L.A.
Yeah, and 11 in L.A. Boston's had all 17 in Boston. And the next closest is the Chicago Bulls with 6 under Jordan.
Okay.
So, I mean, they're,
And then 5 with the Spurs.
light years in front of anybody else here.
Oh, yeah. Well, they dominated for, the better part of 60s, 80s, and 90s, the Lakers and Celtics.
The Celtics had 2 in the 50s. They had
8 in the 60s?
Every single one of the 60s except 67, which my dad says the Philadelphia team that won the championship that year is the best NBA team of all time.
Okay.
And he still says that. He says them in their prime could beat anybody in today's league, which is still absurd.
So they had 11 before 1971, basically.
Yeah. And then they had 74, 76, 3 in the 80s, and then 2008. So, I mean, they've had their runs, they've had their moments.
Sure.
But as far as the Ball family goes, my first question is when he says that they wouldn't play anywhere else except L.A., does that include the Clippers? Would he be would LaVar
Maybe that's
Ball?
what he's saying to not rule everything out. He always just says they're going to play for L.A.
But I wonder how much of his attitude, how much of his arrogance, how much of the press coverage is because he's with the L.A. Lakers as opposed to the L.A. Clippers.
Yeah, I mean, that could be another thing. I mean, L.A., from what I understand from people I talk to, the Clippers are always second fiddle, even when they were better than the Lakers, like during the Paul Griffin eras. They were still second fiddle to Lakers. Lakers still had the more expensive tickets. They had the better celebrities, yada, 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 this and that. So, yeah, I mean, I think eventually he'll have to eat a slice of pie so big enough that he'll say, when the Lakers say, go fuck yourself, and the Orlando Magic come calling, I think Lonzo at some point has to tell him, shut up, dude, I want to play.
Yeah, and that's going to be a question for...
Like, you two are adults at this point, LiAngelo and LaMelo. Find your own contracts.
Right. At some point, they're going to have to do that. And it'll be interesting to see which one of the kids blinks first. Because right now, they're all under daddy's thumb.
Well, the two have nothing right now. They're getting paid Lithuanian contracts, which I don't know what they are, but... I mean, we're talking about a kid, LaMelo, I think he's 16 years old. Like, he should be a junior in high school.
Right. And part of that is, I was just about to say Stockholm Syndrome, but that's probably unfair.
In the beginning, when I was kind of following this LaVar thing, I wanted to say that he had the best interest for his kids. But once you pull your kid out of a fantastic institution like UCLA and then pull your other kid out of high school to go play ball in Lithuania, I lost that belief.
He pulled the kid out of high school because the kid in college fucked up, got caught stealing, and then got booted off of his team. Like, why punish the kid in high school for something the other son did?
And then when your kid should have sat in jail and our country basically went on a limb, not on a limb, but went out and said, all right, we'll get them back, and made a deal. I don't remember exactly the intricacies of that deal. I don't feel like researching it. And I'm not putting anybody on a pedestal. Don't get this all political. If anybody's listening, it's not a Trump thing. But we went out, basically made a deal to get this kid back. This kid was supposed to do 10 years of prison time for stealing whatever the fuck he stole. I think he stole, like, designer shit. Which, again, we're in China, so it's knockoff designer shit.
Right, yeah. The words copyright infringement don't translate to Mandarin.
Point being is we went out and got him, brought him back here without any repercussion for him, and now you guys have just turned into... It's just, I don't know. It's an interesting topic that we spent far longer than I anticipated, and I tell you that.
Yeah, we definitely should have moved on a while ago, especially since...
But that's what he does. I guess it's his perfect mentality. He created a 15-minute conversation on something I wanted to spend like 5 on.
Right, and neither of us actually know what we're talking about here, so I don't know why we...
I mean,
we can have opinions based on what he says.
Yeah, we have opinions. I mean, who said I had to have a factual show?
Well, that's the thing, but, I mean, as soon as we start throwing out more and more uninformed opinions, we're no better than LaVar Ball.
I am. Fuck
Boom.
You. Stay in your lane. Speaking of uninformed opinions... what do you think about Johnny Manziel and his comeback tour, or what is that? I'm sorry tour.
Yeah, it's his. What do you say? He was manic depressive, self-medicating with alcohol and pills, and is the correct term bipolar or
That's
manic?
what he said in his thing.
Okay.
He said he was
bipolar.
Said he was bipolar.
Okay. Yeah, so is my ex-wife, so I have very little sympathy for the people that are going through this without help and without medication. So.
You have very little sympathy?
Very little sympathy.
Okay.
If somebody is diagnosed with that condition, and it's a serious condition, and it's something that needs treatment, it needs people to watch over them, it's something where you cannot go through it alone, and you decide to go through it alone and self-medicate and everything, I have no sympathy. Go fuck yourself.
Fair enough. And that's always the big debate, especially in light of recent events, the mental health debate. We all know what happened down in Florida. Now that we're sparking the gun debate / mental health debate, I don't want to get down into that road, but mental health is definitely an issue that people look at in this country one way or the other. They either have the sympathetic mindset of this person needs help, when you've experienced clear cases where they don't want to help themselves.
Right, and it's the type of thing where, if somebody's undiagnosed and they're going off on their own, then that's unfortunate. Like, I have sympathy for them. If somebody is diagnosed and they're taking their medication, they're going to treatment, they're getting help, and they have a friend and family support network, I have sympathy for them. It's this specific case with the Johnny Manziels of the world where somebody goes out, they know that they have a problem, they've been given medication, they've been given treatment plans, and they choose to ignore it. That's where I lose my sympathy for it. And that's why when Manziel's saying, oh, yeah, he's coming back, he's healthy, he's getting treatment and everything else, good for him if he is actually following through with all this stuff. I am going to hold my applause until I actually see him improved, see him mentally ready to prepare for wherever he may end up. And I guess that's the question is, where is he going to go?
Well, yeah, and the thing is you're right. I mean, you're waiting to hold your revamped opinion on him to see if he's put into a certain situation and how he responds, because you would hope that he's not put into a situation where domestic violence against another woman, the drunk driving. You hope he's not put into those situations, but coming back, making an attempt in the NFL, let's say he's successful, you're immediately back in those situations. And I don't mean to disrespect women at this point, but there are women every single weekend who are going to throw themselves at NFL players, and some of them might be legit, and some of them might be looking for a paycheck. And you're going to not have the time to figure out who's what. Especially if you're going back to Live nightclub in Miami every weekend.
Yeah, and that's, it'll be interesting to see how Manziel is able to avoid these types of distractions. And you wonder if perhaps when he does decide to sign a contract, if he looks for a town that is more free from those distractions than elsewhere. Like, would he choose to sign with a, let's say, Cleveland or a Buffalo over a Miami or an LA, knowing that the nightlife in Cleveland and Buffalo is a different animal than it is in other cities.
Well, now the question is if the Dolphins, if Miami was the only contract available on the table, now what do you do?
Yeah, well, in that case, I mean, he's a...
You got to quarantine yourself at that point, don't you?
Yeah, he's got to take the contract, like hire a guru.
Because even right now, not in the NFL, he's still Johnny Manziel, and he's still a kind of a cult icon right at this point, especially for the Barstool generation.
Yeah, the Barstool generation. All right.
You know what I'm talking about.
Oh, yeah, I absolutely do.
So, it looks to me, based on a lot of the reports and a lot of his testimony and what he said on his redemption tour, is basically that he didn't come out and say it, but just to paraphrase it, it seems that he basically was told every step of the way in his life, look, you're a big shot, you're the top dog, and you don't have to respond to anybody. And that's basically, based on his testimony, that's kind of the way he went about his life. Like here, he's talking about, him and this girl who he had the biggest situation with. He's like, this bitch knows that Live on Sunday is where it's at. I'm surprised she could even get into the club without me. He's using his celebrity status to basically, say fuck you to these other people. And he probably kind of went through life without a care in the world until you realize that, in today's society, sometimes women hold a little bit more power than we think.
Yeah.
Especially in the justice system.
Yeah, not a little bit, a lot of bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I think a lot of football players have gone through that through their lives, though, so I don't know how much of a scapegoat Manziel can use. That's not the right way to say that fucking sentence.
I get what you're saying. I mean, we've had the Ezekiel Elliott, we've had the Greg Hardys, we've had the Ray Rices of the world.
Not just that. We've had, think about everybody in the NFL. Everybody that's played in the NFL was probably one of the top players in their high school, probably one of the top players in their college.
Right.
And, at the very least, they made it to an NFL roster.
Right.
They have been told that they are great their entire lives, every step of the way. So Manziel saying, oh, yeah, I was told that too. That's why I'm a piece of shit like I am. It's like, well, I'm sure Peyton Manning was told that same thing. He never beat his wife.
Yeah.
He was told from early childhood that he was great. He was destined to be great because his dad was in the NFL.
Right.
Eli Manning, same thing. Aaron Rodgers, same thing. Like, we have all of these people that have been told the exact same thing. They've been brought up, not by the same parents, but they brought up in that same athletics first, football first environment where the star players are treated differently, and an overwhelming majority of them are good, upstanding people. So for Manziel to say that he was brought up in that same way and he turned out to be a piece of shit, and now he's trying to blame that upbringing,
yeah, because
I'm not buying it.
We always focus on, obviously, the people who got arrested in the NFL and the people who face charges, etc. But that's only less than 5% of the NFL usually over the course of all the players.
Yeah, we'd have to get the crack research staff on it, but I don't
know the exact number, but I know it's less than it's single digit percent.
Yeah, it's small.
So what's that an attribute to? Because is that just immaturity? Because, like you said, and I hate to, puff up Peyton Manning by any means, but Peyton Manning in an interview basically said, if I'm standing in an elevator and a woman walks in the elevator and it's just us two, I walk out of the elevator. Because once those doors close, it's her word against mine. And let's face it, anything is possible. He literally makes it a point to stay out of trouble.
Yeah.
Whether that creates a problem, obviously he's had his situations. We know them. They're well documented. But at some point, the switch flipped for him to basically say, look, I need to keep myself out of trouble. We know about the situation at Tennessee. He was a kid. Let's put that past him. We know about the steroids. That's a whole different issue. But I'm talking about actual allegations of exactly what Johnny Manziel's facing. He made it a point at some point in his life to basically shut that side of his life down. I don't think he goes out partying, etc. Things like that. And be honest, let's be honest. Peyton Manning at Live nightclub in Miami on a Sunday, that doesn't make sense. But what do you attribute it to? Because you have guys like Manning, and I can't think of. There's so many guys, like you said, 95% plus of the NFL who's not out there creating headlines, or even when they are out there in these nightclubs, know when to say enough's enough. What's the difference? What's that factor between the guy who's having to be a redemption tour, the guy who beats his wife in an elevator in Atlantic City? What's that switch? Is it just maturity?
It's got to be maturity. It's got to be a personal thing that somebody...
Because like you said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you said, every single player in the NFL has been told, you're great.
Yeah. I think it has to be maturity. I don't know if that's like they find religion like a Russell Wilson. I don't know if it's a strong family around them like a Tom Brady or, back in the day, the Andrewsies. I don't know if you remember them from the Patriots.
Yeah.
It's something. There's something in their lives that even though they're told that they're great the whole way, they still have a support system around them that, kind of shapes them to a point where they're not, young boys with millions of dollars and no rules and no repercussions. Like, they know that the real world is out there. They know what to do to keep their noses clean.
Well, and the perfect example of a guy who kind of straddles the fence is Gronk. Gronk keeps himself in the weight room, keeps himself in check. He's got guys around him who are looking out for his best interest that he pays. But at the same time, he was at the waste management thing 2 years ago. It was whatever year they weren't in the Super Bowl 50. He was at the waste management thing partying. He parties whenever he gets a chance. He's down here in Vegas from time to time, and you never hear his name in sexual allegations.
No, and you wonder why that is. I mean,
and he's an easy target.
I mean,
it's not like you could say, Gronk was at rehab pool over here in Vegas at Hard Rock, and he touched me inappropriately. And it's not like you would say, well, yeah, there's no chance that Gronk would be at rehab at Hard Rock on a Sunday afternoon in Vegas. It's a good chance he might be there.
Yeah.
It's not like you're saying, oh, Tom Brady, groped me at the Cosmopolitan. Hey, he's nowhere near Vegas ever. You know what I'm saying? So, except for the Floyd Mayweather fight.
Yeah.
My point being is that there's guys like Manziel who clearly have this attitude of entitlement, and it seems at some point of the way, someone, whether it's him or whether the people around him, let him through. Whereas you have the same flip side, you have a guy like Gronk who does the exact same things, and somebody around him or himself is basically telling him, hey, look, you have to keep your public image intact.
Yeah, and I think part of that, too, is that, we can't overlook the fact that the NFL is willing to forgive a lot of evils if you can produce in this league.
Sure.
Gronkowski can produce in this league. Manziel, when he was around, I have his stats here, 15 games, 1,675 yards, 7 TDs, 7 interceptions. And he rushed for another 259 and a touchdown. So, those
average at best.
Yeah, I mean,
100 yards averaging a game.
Yeah, that's not...
No, it's
That's not enough for somebody like a Manziel to keep his spot as a quarterback.
No, but I also think in a situation not Cleveland, he may have had a chance to sit and learn. He was kind of thrust into the fire because they're just like, let's just throw noodles against the wall, see what sticks. No pun intended, because Manziel's skinny and white, but...
I mean, for God's sake.
My point being is that, yes, you're right. Talent does cure a lot on the field. That's why everybody believed Greg Hardy got a second chance and Ray Rice didn't, because Ray Rice's talent was far diminished from what it used to be. But I have a feeling if, Rob Gronkowski was involved in some rape trials and had to, settle, I'm sure Belichick would probably take a long, hard look at maybe replacing him with somebody else.
Hey, Ray Rice, or not Ray Rice, Ray Lewis went on trial for murder. Mm-hmm. And he still had a long and prosperous career.
Well, he was acquitted.
He was acquitted,
quote unquote.
But
no, not quote unquote. He was acquitted.
I mean,
he
definitively was acquitted. But even as the allegations were up, even as the trial was going on, he was still playing. He was still producing. Mm-hmm. If he was bad, there's no way that he would have stayed on an NFL roster. Once he was acquitted, maybe he gets another chance. He gets an invite to a training camp, something like that. But producing in the NFL will, erase a lot of the outside noise.
Absolutely. Nobody's denying that. I mean, let's look at Ezekiel Elliott just last year. If he would have been convicted of sexual... What was he actually? Like, battery? Or was it battery?
I don't know. It was something unkosher, untoward.
Yeah. If he would have been convicted of what he was accused of, would he be on the roster this year?
If he was convicted? Assuming convicted and serving no jail time, I think the Cowboys cut him to save face, but somebody else picks him up.
So then if you believe that somebody else is going to pick him up because, all these NFL teams saving face, they don't seem to really This is a good interesting way to put it. I wouldn't cut him, especially for the Cowboys. I mean, the Cowboys have always had a long-standing tradition of not really worrying about what people think about their players. Greg Hardy, Michael Irvin, a lot of cocaine back. What was that offensive lineman's name who kept playing? Nate Newton.
Nate Newton. Yeah.
I mean, so if any franchise would not be worried about what they think, it's got to be the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, I think that was more true back in the day than now. But well, maybe you're right.
Anyways, point being is that you're right. Talent will keep you on the field.
Yeah.
The minute it starts slipping, you're gone.
Yeah.
But now we come back to full circle. He's trying again, Johnny Manziel. He's trying to get back on the field. Because he's only, 26, 27 maybe?
Oh, God. I mean, his rookie year was, 2014, so if he was...
Was it really?
Yeah.
Wow. Well, he's in this spring league, I guess. That's what they're calling it. It's a 3-week scouting event in Austin, Texas, which splits players into 4 teams that play 2 games apiece. They'll be broadcasted on Turner Sports Sprint streaming service, and Manziel sees it as a way to get his career back on track to the NFL, and he hopes that people see him in a different light in the front offices of these franchises, and he says the comeback is real. What do you think?
I wouldn't doubt it. I mean, I know for a lot of people that are going through like drug and alcohol rehab, that exercise and working out and that kind of thing is something that they focus on because you're essentially replacing one addiction with another.
Right.
So, I could certainly see that is part of his treatment is to get back out there to work at it. He's probably hired a new coach, like a personal throwing coach or whatever, to get him back into NFL shape. I certainly can see him being somewhat viable as a,
backup quarterback.
Yeah, and I guess that's the question is, let's say he does the spring league and he says he wants to play in the NFL and somebody is willing to give him a backup job. Does he take it? I mean, if he wants to play and he feels like he can play at the NFL level, does he accept a backup job where he might not see the field ever?
Well, I guess the bigger question would be, okay, so if he has 2 offers on the table, and the first offer is the backup job for Seattle. That's not a good one. So let's see. The backup job for Alex Smith in Washington. Okay? Or the starting job for the Toronto Argonauts. What do you take?
I mean, if it's me in that situation and I say I want to play, then I want to play. I take Toronto.
Right. But he has specifically said in these interviews his focus is on returning to the NFL. He didn't say by any means necessary, which would mean potentially, we see the Flutie, we see the Warren Moons, they've gone the other routes.
Yeah.
And the Canadian League is not, a huge step down. I mean, there are people from the Canadian leagues that jump into the NFL every single year.
Oh, yeah.
We don't hear the names.
They play really well, too.
Right. I mean, you hear the names are the names that became somebody, but every year the NFL uses the Canadian League as just as much of as a platform as the college league.
Yeah. Have you ever watched the CFL game, by the way?
No, I have not.
It's actually really entertaining.
People say that all the time.
The field is longer and wider. They have 12 people on the field instead of 11. And they allow the wide receivers and everybody to move pre-snap. So the wide receivers
are arena style?
Yeah, so they're running towards the line of scrimmage.
Already at full sprint?
Already at full sprint before the ball's even snapped. So once the ball is snapped, all of the guys are already at full trot, leaving the line and going to run their routes.
It seems like a disadvantage to the defenders.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the point. But the flip side of that is you only get 3 downs, not 4. So
okay.
It's a little different that way. So I think for somebody like a Manziel who loves a run and gun style where he can, bomb it or he can run it himself, having a wide open field like that is actually beneficial to his game. Like if he wants to show off his skills, do it in a place where the field is wider and longer and you're going to be able to, have more of these receivers running, faster routes. So that way you can show off your talents and then come back to the NFL that way.
I think the question is for Johnny Manziel is, say he goes the Canadian route, the Canadian Football League. what time frame? I mean, if he doesn't get a job, he plays 1 year in the Canadian Football League and no one's really calling, and then he plays 2 years and no one's really calling. How long does he stay? I mean, how long till it becomes frustrating for him?
Well, I guess that's the question. If he's in the CFL and nobody in the NFL is calling, why would you leave the CFL? Like, where would you go? The XFL?
I don't think he can. He's a criminal. If you believe and hold McMahon to exactly what he says.
Oh, for God's sake.
Well, I mean, I'm just telling you on face value exactly what Vince McMahon said in his press conference. If we're not going to have people with a criminal record, that would rule Manziel out. Of course, that'd rule a lot of people out, but still.
Right, and that's, I think if somebody like a Manziel became available for the XFL and they were worried about ticket sales and jersey sales and everything that we've been talking about with the Ball family, then I think you have to bite the bullet and take on a Manziel. And then you say, well, when we said no criminals, we meant no murderers.
Or rapists.
You put stipulations on it, and you find a way to backdoor your way to let Manziel play in that league.
Are we trying to get a XFL team back here in Vegas?
I have no idea. All I've heard is that the XFL is coming back. I haven't heard how many teams, where they're going, or anything like that.
But I mean, have you heard anything locally that, like, now that we have the Raiders, I mean, the XFL would seem kind of childish here.
Right. Yeah.
Not that I'm a big fan of the Raiders coming here. I'm just saying that, like, when we had the Las Vegas Locomotives. What were they?
Well, the Locomotives were the UFL for
Las Vegas.
The we had a CFL team that was the Las Vegas Posse. For the XFL, I think it was
CFL team. What do you mean?
We had a CFL. The CFL expanded into the United States back in the 90s.
Oh, did it? I didn't know that.
And Baltimore, before they had the Ravens, had a CFL team. They're actually I think the only American team to win the Grey Cup.
Interesting.
But the
more you know.
The XFL team in Vegas, I think they were the Las Vegas Outlaws.
Outlaws. That's what the XFL team is. That was the XFL team, right? Outlaws?
XFL was Outlaws. UFL was Locomotives.
What was the Arena League? Were the Outlaws?
The Arena League. Oh, yeah. Well, we had the
KISS, right? The KISS team? I forget.
We had the Las Vegas Gladiators when I first moved here for the Arena League. They moved to Cleveland. And then we got the Vince Neil team that lasted almost an entire year, but then they folded for like the last couple of weeks because nobody went to those games.
The Las Vegas was the Outlaws, you're right. For the XFL.
For the XFL, okay.
Yeah. So.
But yeah, that Vince Neil Arena League team that they put in, that might have been the Outlaws as well.
I mean, come on, of all the names,
I know.
They couldn't have gotten something else. Let's see. It was the Outlaws as well. You're right.
Yeah.
So.
Okay.
All right. Well, I remember they had something to do with KISS too, or something like that.
There is a KISS Arena League team, but they're in LA.
Are they LA KISS?
Yeah.
Ugh, that's a terrible name.
Yeah.
Anyways, before you completely turn off your dials at this point,
as we take a stroll down the defunct teams,
defunct Las Vegas teams who completely had an inability to name themselves. Yeah, we'll wrap it up there before we start playing the game. But just last ditch, final thought: do you see Johnny Manziel back in the NFL within 3 years?
As a backup?
As anything, just on a roster.
As a backup, if he decides to accept it, then yes. And I think that if he has a choice between an NFL backup and a CFL, competing for a starting job, I think he takes the NFL just for the prestige.
Fair enough. I can see him. I can see him doing that too. Yeah, I was going to say I could see him if something's on the table, something over nothing. Obviously, he's going to take it. I think he'd be wise to try to go play in the CFL because it's not like people aren't looking who are in the NFL, and he's Johnny Manziel. If Johnny Manziel went, same as Colin Kaepernick. If Kaepernick went to the CFL, he'd be a notoriety. So, anywho, let's wrap it up there. Any final thoughts on what's going on this week in sports? I know that tomorrow's the Montreal game, and I know you're getting ready with to flip the script and turn into Mr. Hyde this weekend.
Yes, I am going to be unpleasant to Montreal fans. Just warning people in advance if you happen to be sitting in my section. Although I guess I'm a little bit worried because the guy who sits behind me, his brother's coming to town for this game, and he's a Montreal fan, and apparently this dude is big. So I don't know how much I can actually run my mouth, so I guess I got to play that by ear.
Well, I got your back, but I'm on the other side of the arena, so you might need to preemptively text me.
That's probably not going to work out. No, I mean,
are you going to wear your Bruins hat over your jersey?
I'm Bruins jersey, Marchand jersey, actually.
You're going to wear a Bruins jersey tomorrow?
Bruins jersey, Bruins hat, Bruins scarf.
So no VGK at all?
No.
Oh, interesting. You're one of those guys.
Yeah.
Two teams that aren't even I'm wearing a jersey of the two teams that aren't even playing.
Yeah, but no, it's just to get under the skin of Montreal fans a little bit more, especially because they're so bad this year that I don't actually expect them to do well. I mean, Carey Price looked like garbage in that game against Arizona this week.
Yeah.
So if he plays that poorly against Vegas, they have no chance of winning this game.
He's their only chance of winning, and you're right. If he has any kind of game like he did against Arizona, it's going to be tough.
I'm going to look up that line right now.
So anyways, well, we appreciate you listening. You can catch us on a variety of different outlets. Again, you can catch us on our website, vegassquares.com. You can click the podcast tab, and you can hear our lovely voices. You can also listen to us on the Forward Mile Podcast Network, forwardmile.com. And we are available on 12 Ounce Sports Radio. You can catch us at 12ozsportsradio.com. All of those outlets will have our lovely voices, as long as well as Tony sometimes as well when he feels like showing up. He might be on one of those Manziel hookers and blowbenders this week. It is Friday night. So.
Hey, go for it, Tony.
All right. So anyways, for Spike, I am Aaron. We appreciate you tuning in. We hope to see you next time. Thanks for listening.